to wrap
wearing
things
my.
up. Call it a week. That's a damn nice looking shirt right there.
It fits good,
It
man. I
makes you
like
look good too. In case you were
doesn't it?
wondering.
I think the bright white brings out my complexion.
That could, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I notice when I've got my lighter shirts on, I look darker. I don't know if that's like
Okay. Yeah.
that's a trick of my old eyes or not, but it appears that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wish I could have gotten out in the sun more this week, but no, unfortunately not. We've been under cloud cover basically since Monday.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Here in Florida, it was nice. We just I spent a week long. I had a resort booked here in Orlando for like a water park resort, and we were there for 5 days. And I brought my kids out, and I let them invite their friends, and so I kind of chaperoned
nice.
my son and his friends, and it was just playing in the water park, slides and sun tanning. So yeah, so nice and dark. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I would much have preferred that type of weather. We've had it's interesting because it's been kind of the same every day but slightly different. It's like the cycle uh it comes in at different times during the day cuz we've had
yeah,
storms roll through for like 4 days straight now,
hmm,
which is unusual,
yeah,
I would say. And
yeah,
these have been the more highly charged electrical type storms,
hmm,
right? A lot
yeah,
of lightning, a lot of thunder. Haven't
yeah,
lost power, knock on wood, thank
yeah,
goodness. But there's been a lot of charged energy,
yeah,
moving through the area. To I think I mentioned it in the live stream chat earlier tonight. There was one lightning strike that was so close, I flinched because there was
oh,
there was yeah there
really?
was
Okay.
no time between the light flash and the crack of thunder. It was instantaneous.
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, oh, holy shit, wow.
Yeah, shit.
I think it was cloud to cloud because I didn't hear like an explosion or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was wild, and it's been like that every day.
Well, I don't know. So I don't know how long you've lived in Texas in that part. But since I've been
Not
living
long
here,
enough to really talk about it authoritatively.
well, this might jar your memory, and maybe you can remember back to some of these things. But since I've been down here in Florida, one thing I've noticed is that so I live kind of like Central Florida, and more closer to the East Coast. And so when we were out there all this week, um, every day about maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, we would get thunderstorms.
Mm-hmm.
And when the thunderstorms come, when they see thunder within 5 miles, this is what we used to do for diving too. If a thunderstorm is within 5 miles, then you have to stop diving operations because in case water, you got divers in the water when there's lightning
Right.
strike. So they do this precaution for water parks or pools, and so this was happening, throughout the week. And my son asked me, he's like, "Hey, Papa, why does it always happen at this certain time?" And I said, "Look, man," I said, "you got to think about this. Okay, now in the summertime, we're getting near the solstice. Okay, June
Mm-hmm.
21st. When wherever you're at in the world, June 21st is the summer solstice when the sun, wherever you're living, should be at its high point in the sky. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to go no higher than that wherever you're at. And for us, it's almost like directly above, if not maybe a little bit north.
Yeah.
So for you, it might be coming in right about straight directly up. But anyways, so I was telling him, I was like, think about this. Now, again, I think most people know that if you don't know, I don't believe in the global model, and I believe the Earth is local, the Sun is local,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that as it's traveling, okay, when the sun, okay, if you think about a ring or a flat disc as it's traveling out, at its furthest point, December 25th, okay, that's when the sun is furthest away from the northern hemisphere. Okay, so that's when you get
Mm-hmm.
your winters. The sun, after it does uh, the winter solstice, it then starts to move back towards the center. It gets to its next high point where it's going to go no further north on a flat Earth model than December 21st. That's the high point. Okay, and then from there, that's when the sun is most direct and it's closest to us. So as the sun's traveling, when we see it rise in the east, it's crossing a big body of water, the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. Now, I've also experienced these conditions in other places. Okay.
Hmm.
And I'll explain that right now. So, if the sun is local, and if the sun is directly above us in the summertime, as it's crossing, it's going through 24 hours of a day, heating up the Atlantic Ocean. And that's why all across the eastern coastboard of the United States, you have warm waters. I've been surfing
Hmm.
in Florida and even in Virginia. It's like bath water almost, okay, because the water's been being heated up by the sun as it's been passing for 24 hours. When it hits the landmass, especially here in Florida, when it hits the landmass, all this warm moisture that's coming as it's evaporating, it's traveling like just behind the sun as it's coming across. And then when it hits the big landmass, okay, it stops because of the landmass, and then it just dumps. And usually that happens about 4 or 5 o'clock, six o'clock in the afternoon, every day during the summertime. During June and July, those are our rainy seasons.
Hmm.
And when I was in Japan, it's the same thing. Okay. That's why if the sun is local and it's traveling, now it's coming across the Atlantic Ocean, brings all that warm water. But then when it hits this big landmass, it's going through 3,000 miles of just landmass. Okay. That's why California and all the West Coast has cold waters because the sun hasn't been there yet. And then as the sun's coming across, it starts to heat it up. So by the time it gets to Hawaii, and I've experienced this too because I've been in Hawaii, I've lived in Hawaii for a little bit. Um, you have warm waters there because it's crossing the Pacific Ocean.
Hmm.
Hawaii, and then also that's why Hawaii has that tropical season because it brings in all this moisture. That's why when it hits these land masses, it dumps rain. That's the tropical season, and then it crosses over. And even you can experience this in the Big Island because they got Mount Mauna Kea, which is 14,000 feet.
Hmm.
As that moisture is coming across on the eastern side of of Kauai, or I'm sorry, Kona, it rains. It just dumps rain because then it's got this mountain that it's got to cross. So that's why the west side on Kona, if you don't know this, it's completely dry because all of that moisture and all that climate stops and just dumps rain, and that's why in
Can't
on
get
the
over the
eastern,
mountain.
yeah, can't get over the mountain.
Yeah.
So then as the sun's still traveling, it goes to Japan. Now I've surfed in Japan, and in Japan, again, during the summertime, warm waters like a bath water because all that Pacific Ocean's been heated up. Does that
Right.
make sense? So these are some things that I just put things together. Like no one's told me
So
this.
right. And
This is my opinion. It's my opinion.
I'm trying to follow you the best that I can.
Yeah.
Um, to my understanding, because again, I've only ever lived in the northern hemisphere, right?
Okay.
I haven't experienced anything down in the southern hemisphere. So as far as I know, it doesn't have even actually exist. You know, like
Yeah.
Matt Finley, he's a figment of the internet as
Yeah.
far as I know, because I've
Yeah.
never been to the southern hemisphere. I've never physically been able to verify that it's there.
Okay.
But I do know that I've experienced some similar things to what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like how that works with the dual hemisphere model.
Well, there is so
So
within
because here's
yeah.
the thing with the way the sun tracks across from east to west,
Yes.
right? It,
Mhm.
it makes sense where in for us in the summer, like especially when we're getting towards the summer solstice like we are now, the sun is positioned more above the northern hemisphere
Yes.
than it is the southern hemisphere. That's why
Yep.
it's warmer in the north than it is in the south, and vice versa. When we get to winter, it's above the southern hemisphere,
Yes.
right?
Hmm. Yes.
But then we get to that point, let's call it the international date line,
Yeah.
all right, where it begins the 24-hour revolution again.
Okay. Yeah.
How do you account for that cycle?
Yeah. So think about it this way. So I'm going to speak from a geocentric model. Okay. I'm not going to call it flat Earth because I don't know what the shape of the Earth is.
Right.
All I know is I'm speaking geocentric. As the Earth is the center, and let's just say the sun and the moon revolve around each other. Okay. And it's almost like they work as a battery. Okay. The positive, the negative, and the Earth is the salt bridge. So that's an interesting thing. But think about this. So we know these old stories from ancient cultures like the maypole, where it starts off in the center very small, and then it gets up bigger and bigger and bigger, and it goes out to where it can't go anymore. And then what they do, they bring it back, and it starts to come back into the center.
No, this is
Now,
spiral. Yeah.
yeah, on the spiral. So now think about this. On a geocentric model, or I'm sorry, a heliocentric model, where the sun is the center and we are revolving around the sun on an orbit. Okay, we got to orbit around the sun. Supposedly, in the northern hemisphere, okay, when the Earth is the furthest away from the sun, that's when we experience our summer. But they say that there is this tilt. There is this tilt on a 23 point something degree axis, which
Right.
comes out to like yeah, like 26.66 degrees or something like the 666 there, right?
Yeah. They always got to
So
get a
yeah,
number in there. Yeah.
but when the Earth on its orbit is the furthest away from the sun, just because of its tilt, it's saying that that's why we experience the summer. Now, in the southern hemisphere, when it comes back around on the opposite side, when the sun is its closest, or I'm sorry, the Earth is its closest to the sun. Okay, that's when the southern hemisphere is said to experience their winter time. So when we're at our furthest point, just based on an angle, they say we experience this extreme summers. But then on the other side, you have on the southern hemisphere, they explain that because of the tilt, that's why they get their winters when they're the closest to the sun. So it doesn't that stuff doesn't really match. What matches to me
Right.
is that what matches to me is that the sun is moving outwardly when it gets to its lowest point and then starts to move back inwardly. And it does these cycles, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. That's when it does it. So um, that's why when you go to South America or you go anywhere within the Gulf and you have
Hmm.
that's why the Gulf gets
Anywhere in
these
the tropics.
extremes. Yeah, anywhere in the tropics, you get these extreme storms because the sun is kind of always there
Hmm.
and it brings in all that humidity and all that moisture.
Yeah.
And I've been also in the Middle East where,
I experienced
um,
it in Acapulco.
okay, yeah, so so where does this moisture come from, right? We just got to look at nature and what nature tells us.
Comes
You
it comes from the surface is where it comes from.
know,
It
sure.
does. I've experienced that whole process throughout the course of the day,
Yeah.
where before the sun comes up and the all the moisture in the air for the most part has settled and become dew.
Yeah.
It's very it's actually in the tropics. That's like the most comfortable part of the day for me as a
Hmm.
Caucasian, being in a place that was much warmer than what I grew up in. Like
Yeah.
that was like, that was the best part of the day, right? And
Yeah.
then the sun comes up and
Yeah.
it's like literally the moment that the first ray of light breaks on the horizon, you start feeling the humidity
Yeah.
go up into the air. And it
Yeah.
takes a few hours. Like it takes until the sun is like a pretty good height in the sky
Yeah.
before like that process starts to slow down. And you can, like, if you're sensitive to that sort of thing where you can feel an increase in the humidity in the air, like
Yeah.
you can literally feel it on your skin as it's happening. It's wild. And then the exact reverse happens when the sun sets at night. You
Yeah.
can feel the moisture falling back down to the ground.
Sure. So let's think about this. What is humidity, and why this was is on the eastern coast of the United States, all the coast experiences humidity during the summertime.
Mhm.
The West Coast doesn't. The West Coast is not humid. Okay. Now think about this. Let's think about how you heat up water. Just like you said, when water heats up, okay, this is what kind of creates the dew, and this is why we have some mornings that are more fog than others is
Mhm.
because of this. Okay, so because think about this: if the sun is local and it's heating up this Atlantic water and this Gulf water, because it's close and it's local. It's heating it up. Okay, when it heats the water up, the water starts to evaporate, and that's what creates the humidity. And again, it's traveling behind the sun because the sun's moving, and then it creates that, and it creates that humidity, and then it follows it because it's traveling on a cycle. And you can look at radar maps on a geocentric model, and it will show this cycle of like a circular thing, which makes sense. So what I'm saying is that the evaporation, or why it's humid in the southern part of Texas and Louisiana and Florida and all across the eastern board, is because the water is being heated up. It's evaporating into the air, which creates the humidity. And then when it hits the landmass, it has nowhere to go, so then it drops.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
We should get our good buddy Matt Finley in the chat and from the group and see what he's got to say down there and whatever he's experiencing in the land down under, or the land of nowhere.
Yeah, in the future. In the future.
Yeah,
he lives in the future. I like telling people here in Texas that I have a friend that lives in the future. I get the funniest looks.
Yeah. Tell me the bets. Tell me the bets from the future. Get Matt to Matt could like hook us up.
I know he could get us the Powerball numbers, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Take like 150 million in tax dollars. Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
I would do that.
Yeah.
So what's on your mind tonight, man?
Oh man, too many things. You've been covered pretty well in the Telegram group. You've been posting what's going on recently, and this is just, when I saw this the other night, I don't know what to think.
What are we talking about here? Because there's a lot of stuff that's been going on this week.
For sure. So let's start off with number one, the let's say number one, the LA riots.
Okay.
LA riots, and then spreading to other cities.
Right. Okay. Which I don't know if anybody else has noticed, like within the past 24 hours, nobody's covering that anymore.
Yeah, sure. Because it's all on what? Israel striking Iran.
Yeah. And Iran striking back.
And then today, Iran striking back. Like, you couldn't even plant yourself back, and like, who's thinking about, because who's even thinking about what's going on in Los Angeles? Because Los Angeles, everyone hates Los Angeles anyways, right?
Yeah, it's California.
So then you got this incident that happens, and there's this threat of nuclear war, like, boom, there's the shift right there. Mm-hmm. And these guys are masterminds, man. Like, mm-hmm. Someone is very good at writing novels. Like, he probably writes like all the Harry Potter shit. Like J.K. Rowling, she's probably mastermind behind this.
I wouldn't be
this
surprised
is masterful.
If she consulted.
This is masterful.
They telegraphed it a long time ago.
Yes,
that's the problem. And they keep doing it because they every now and then you'll hear somebody work into a conversation. You know, we're in a time where years are happening in weeks or something to that effect, right? I've noticed a fair amount of the talking heads say something to that effect in the course of the last 5 years. To me, that's programming.
Yeah.
Like, we're supposed to believe that there's some sort of acceleration happening. I don't know. I had a feeling that this summer was going to be active from the standpoint of, events that were going to kind of tap people's emotional responses.
Yeah.
And so far, I haven't been disappointed. There's been quite a bit of that, basically since the beginning of the month of June. It was almost like the whole tariff dance throughout April and May was to kind of get people on that uneasy footing so that then we could start in with the body blows and soften them up,
Yeah.
over the course of the summer
Yeah.
for whatever eventual catalyzing event is supposed to take place.
Yes. Now here, think about this. Okay, this is a correlation I was thinking about over the past couple of days, because I remember back in 2020. Okay, the beginning of the year. When was Soleimani, that Iranian general?
I think it was
Uh,
January.
January, yeah, January 3rd or 4th. I know that for a fact because I had just gotten to CENTCOM, which is in the Middle East.
Right.
And when that happened, I was there. I just got there. Okay. Now, when you deploy and you go to locations, you get this in brief about threats and whatnot. And
January
there was
3rd, 2020.
there was no threats about that. There was no threats about Iran, you know, doing any kind of strike. Okay.
Right.
Or anything about Iran. There was no threats about that kind of stuff. And so when it happened, they put all of us on the military base on high alert. We were at boom, high alert. And
Well,
I remember
obviously,
thinking, like,
yeah.
oh shit. Yeah, I was like, okay, shit, And then they supposedly launched a drone at our base. It went down in the bay. We sent guys to go out and to retrieve it. They called us off. We couldn't complete it. They didn't want us to find it, whatever. And then we had to come back, right? We didn't find anything.
Right.
Now think about this. So that was January 3rd or 4th. And what happened 2 months later? COVID came down and boom, we were locked down, okay, by March. I remember that because that's when I remember one day I was going into work.
So,
said
March 17th, I think,
Yeah,
was the national lockdown order.
Yeah. Well, in the military, it was mid-March. Yeah, it could have been about the 17th, where I was going to go to a meeting, and they said the meeting was canceled because we had to stay away from each other. And that's when it first happened at the Middle East.
Right.
Now, think about this. So I mentioned this. I don't know if I did mention this last week, but I was privy to a channel, a guy he's called Richie from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And he put out a video where he says that there's a document. You could download the document. And I looked at it. But basically, the document was created last year in 2024, talking about a pandemic, an outbreak of some crazy, and again, COVID style, virus that was going to be released on July 4th of 2025. Yeah. Okay, right? So, for one, if you're writing a scenario, this is a scenario, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of like Event 201. But if you're writing a scenario, why would you pick July 4th when they're in the scenario? They're going to equate something with a national holiday, right? Why would you do that? They could have picked any date, right? In 2025. Now, think about this.
Well, it depends on how the deployment of the pathogen happens, but
yes, yeah. but think about this. So,
I mean, July 4th is significant in history for more than just our Independence Day.
Okay, sure. Yeah, maybe you can tell us about that. But what I wanted to mention was that the correlation is that in January, that's when they hit Soleimani, okay, and we were hiding like, oh, Iran's on the radar, and then a few months later, 2 months later, COVID happens, okay, and now according to this document, now it actually talks about civil unrest and all this kind of stuff prior to this happening in the document, okay. We have all of this stuff, civil unrest. There's board rider, ICE protests. There's protests happening. This nuclear thing happens, and they assassinate Iranian generals, just like they did back in 2020. Next month is July 4th. So I'm not saying that there's going to be something that's going to happen, but we'll see how this plays out. Let's see July 4th or July and how they play this thing out. Because if they come out with another medical pandemic, then we know this is the playbook.
Well, I mean, there's going to be more biosecurity events. Let's call them that.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
because the 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 medical jargon is so fucked at this point. I don't even want to use it anymore. So we'll
Yeah.
just call it a biosecurity event.
Yes.
Obviously, that's I think that's a given. If you look at where the money has been invested over time,
Hmm.
that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The thing that still hasn't happened yet, and I think we're getting pretty close to it at this point, is the major internet event,
Yes.
which opens the door
Yeah.
for the widespread adoption of the digital ID, because we already have some
That.
localized adoption
Mhm.
in various corners of the world of the digital ID. But as far as
Yeah.
like in the United States, with rare exception, most people don't have one yet. And they
Yeah.
don't,
No.
this is the more important part. They don't know why they need one yet. All
Yeah.
right. That's where the event comes in, because that's where the sales pitch is going to be. This is why you need it.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is why it gives you peace of mind.
Yeah.
Keep that in
Absolutely.
mind. That is going to be a part of it, because again, we're dealing with people who are used to consuming pablum
Yeah.
for their media. All right. So
Yeah.
it's not going to be difficult to convince these people that
Yeah.
this is a good thing and this is something that they need.
Yeah.
And it's coming.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned several things there, but what I want to get back to too about the whole Iranian bombing and whatnot is
Mhm.
was what is his name? His real name, Milo Milakowski,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Benjamin
Benjamin
Netanyahu.
Milikowski.
But yeah, Milo Milakowski,
Yeah.
whatever his Polish name is. He comes on. He's saying, he's like, we had to do this. We struck their nuclear facilities because they weren't combining or abiding
Mhm.
to the expect. We
Yeah.
struck their nuclear facilities. Now, the nuclear aspect has been heightened up. We're talking about nuclear World War, like World War III, right?
Mhm.
With Iran and whatnot. And then what happens is I saw today an interview from Tulsi Gabbard. And she said that last week or within the last several days, she went to Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. And I've been to both of those places. And she came on the TV and was saying stuff like, oh, I've been there. I've seen the damage. I know what nuclear, Holocaust can do. And we need
Mhm.
to, now we're at this high, so she's pumping up this fear porn
Yeah.
of nuclear arsenal, right?
Mhm.
And then so check this out now.
Doing her job as DNI is what she's
Yes.
doing.
Yes. And so that would justify why, but Milo Bukowski comes on and says, "Hey, we had to do this because we had to strike their nuclear facilities," and she's pumping this thing up. Now, some things that were very key in what she said is because I've been trained in nuclear uh, warfare. Okay,
Mhm.
so I can't go into detail about the construction and all that stuff of nuclear warheads, but let's just think about Fat Man and Little Boy. Okay, Fat Man and Little Boy were
Mhm.
rudimentary nuclear weapons. Okay, and
They were
what was
prototypes, basically.
yeah, and so what was supposed to be said was from there was that it was going to create this. That's what destroyed the whole city was the aftermath, right?
Right.
The radiation aftermath. Okay, so within radiation, if people don't know this, there's only four types of radiation you can experience, or from nuclear stuff. There is alpha, beta, gamma, and then neutrons.
Mhm.
Alpha and beta are particulate, so you could get alpha and beta on your skin, and you can wash it off. And so long as you don't ingest it, it's not going to affect you.
Mm.
Okay, gamma and neutron are energetic. It's radio waves, so that can penetrate your skin.
Right.
Okay, and so these new nuclear weapons are supposed to be created off of the hydrogen, the hydrogen bomb and the atom bomb, with the energetic because it would be to cause more damage, right? Because it could reach out more because it's
Right.
radio waves, right? Rather than particulate that you can kind of clean up. Okay. Now, why would we go back? Why would we? So she started in her talk, and she's saying about like oh, the nuclear fallout, but there would be no nuclear fallout if they're using hydrogen atomic bombs or these higher end bombs that are emitting gamma and neutron waves. Like
Right.
why would right? So
Right. There
she's
wouldn't be
mixing the
fallout
two.
because there wouldn't be no,
Yeah,
yeah, there's
so
no
she's mixing
physical
the two.
particulate matter.
She's mixing the two. And then there is enough open source information out there that when you go back and look at what was supposed to have happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it wasn't. And I've been to those places and it is flourishing. There is life
That's what
there.
I've
The
heard.
water's good there. The plants there, like there is no. And
I've
I'm
heard,
gonna.
and here's the thing. I've heard the
Yeah,
same thing about Chernobyl as well.
yes. Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
that basically, like, we're not even, I think, 40 years past Chernobyl, or we might be like right at 40 years past Chernobyl. But like, the wildlife around there is flourishing. The
Yep.
vegetation is coming back.
That's
Like,
right.
yeah, it's basically like they have to keep the forest from reclaiming the power station, essentially.
Right. And so there was no cleanup. There may have been cleanup done at the site, but there was no cleanup done around the forest that was supposedly affected. Right.
Right.
There was no. They couldn't have cleaned it. What did nature do? Nature did its thing and got rid of it and started growing again. That's what nature does. So naturally, I don't believe in nuclear armament as they say it is. I think this is all a big ruse,
Hmm.
um, and that's my opinion.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Because
Well,
when you get to the
mm,
bottom of a lot of things in this world that we're supposed to believe are true, what you find out is it's just a dog and pony show,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
it's a clever magic trick to make you think that it is the thing that they're presenting, as long as you
yeah,
don't ask too many questions, you know?
right, yeah. Now, here, think about this. Okay, now this nuclear hoax, as I'm calling it, this is my opinion. Okay, um, you know, I think if people looked it up, they would come to the same conclusions. But basically, this nuclear hoax, okay,
Hmm.
as I'm saying that it is, this is brought to you by the same people who have brought to you the AIDS nonsense, which was a complete lie, the COVID nonsense, which is a complete lie, the polio nonsense, which is a complete lie.
Hmm.
These are the same people that brought you those, and now they're bringing you this nuclear, threat.
Yeah.
Who are you going to trust? Who are you going to trust? Right?
Here's my thing with the whole nuclear question, right? Whether it's a legit weapon or whether it's a hoax. I know that because it's documented in multiple places. I know that DARPA spent money in the
Okay.
1960s, I believe it was,
Okay.
to develop a seismic detection system that they could deploy across the entire planet. And one of the purposes of this seismic detection system, specifically and stated in the actual project itself, as far as what has been declassified and made available for public view, is one of its stated purposes was to detect the seismic activity associated with the development of nuclear weapons,
Okay.
which could be a very cleverly crafted cover story
Yeah.
for whatever it was that the project was actually doing. But given the nature of the dog and pony show that was happening on the world stage at
Yeah.
that time, there's a part of me that goes, there's something that kind of sounds right about that because they were spending a bunch of money on this project.
Okay.
And if they're admitting that this is one of the uses that they had for the project, I'm kind of inclined to accept that at face value because of the fact that I know that there are other uses that they're not disclosing, hoping that people will accept that at face value.
Okay. I think I'm following you.
So it's just one of those things. Like, I would like to be able to have more personal interaction with people who actually work on the development of the armament itself.
Sure.
Which at this point is not going to happen. Most of those
Sure.
folks are dead. They're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's where I think we could get to the real real answers regarding all of this.
Okay.
I think for the most part, you're right. It's a bunch of theater now.
Yeah.
Like if they actually have this capability and it is as lethal as they claim it is, nobody in their right mind would ever use it. Nobody in their right mind would ever allow anybody else to ever use it either.
Yeah.
But it is a very convenient cudgel for the public. That was what they figured out back in the 1950s. We can use this as a tool in order to shape mass behavior and get it pointed in the direction we want it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's what the whole doctrine of mutual annihilation was all about. It wasn't about winning some sort of military conflict. It was about scaring the shit out of the public.
Yeah. Yeah, and they did these test runs just like the test run they did with World at War, right?
Mm-hmm.
With when listening on the radio, like people were listening on the radio, right? It was a test. It was a test to see how many people would believe that there was actual alien invasion, right? Because listen to the radio, but they didn't know that when they first started off, hey, this is just a story, or whatever, right? I don't know what this said, but so what you're getting at now, with this nuclear idea. Let's go back to the nuclear idea. Supposedly, now I know this. I'll say this. This is my opinion. I believe there are things here on this earth that if you ingest them, it's going to be damaging. Metals or whatnot, or compounds.
Right.
Like there's things that there's going to be toxic for your body. Yeah, there's going to be toxins for your body. Now, this idea that there is two elements that if you bring them together, it causes a criticality to where it causes a mass explosion and then a chain reaction. Let's say that's the idea of that. Mm-hmm. So where do we ever see that in nature? We don't. Now I know because I'm an explosive expert, or used to be. I used to be an explosive expert in the military, so I know this. When you put certain compounds together,
you still are an expert. I don't think you lose that expertise just because you're not in the service anymore. Yeah.
So you put certain elements together, you create a compound, okay? And when you experience that compound, because of its instability, okay, its instability to heat, shock, and friction, that's what creates the explosion. It's a chemical reaction, okay? Right. So this idea that you're going to bring two elements together that are so potent that it'll cause that criticality, where do you have the heat, shock, and friction at? There is none. So it doesn't follow nature. Okay. So this idea that they can bring two materials together and cause supercriticality that would cause our chain reaction, I don't think we see that in nature.
I don't know how volcanoes work personally.
There's more gases, I think, involved. There's I believe so. I think there's gases and things within the earth that I don't think it's the same thing. It's not because this is so again. This is man-made stuff. This is man-made stuff.
But I'm trying to think of, because again, the what we're told we're supposed to believe about the lethality of the weapon. The only thing that I could equate that to would be something like a volcanic eruption.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, like if we're looking for some sort of analog in nature.
Yeah.
And my problem is I don't know enough about how that geological process works in order
Me
to
either.
create, molten lava.
Yeah, me either.
Which is something that you don't encounter everywhere on the planet, but it is here, and it's one of the reasons that we have homes and we can draw up deeds for properties and that sort of thing, is because of that process. Or at least that's how I learned it in ninth grade science class. But again, the problem with the whole nuclear question is consider the source.
Yeah.
Right? It came onto the world stage in 1945. All right, when we were already in the process where the intelligence services, not just here in the United States, but internationally, were beginning to coalesce.
Oh yeah, they're building up.
Right, they were coming together. They were beginning to build their apparatchik and their infrastructure and all of that, and they had this convenient boogeyman that they could use as cover. In order to build their empire, essentially.
Yeah.
Those are the considerations that lead me in the direction of thinking that it's probably not what they're telling us it is. It's something different. But the problem is, like, we're so far into this particular lie that trying to unravel it and get back to whatever the seed truth was, is a fool's errand. Essentially, you'll spend your entire life trying to do it if you're even successful. Yeah,
dude, check this out. I'm gonna go a little bit off topic, but it's gonna align. And you'll see. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna refer to a movie. I love this movie. You've seen it probably. Many of the listeners have probably seen it. Tombstone. Okay, Tombstone. And everybody loves Doc Holliday. He was my favorite character in the movie. I liked Wilder, Kurt Russell's character too. Yeah. But Doc Holliday was one of my favorites. And there's the incident where a scene happens where Ringo is drunk because one of the guys got murdered, I think, and or thrown in jail. Got thrown in jail, and he's drunk, and he's just like, I'm playing for blood. Come out here and play for blood. And then Doc Holliday is listening, and he steps up and says, I'm your Huckleberry. He said, playing for blood? Well, that's just my game. And then he's like, all right, Lunger, let's do it. And then they're squaring off, and they're like circling each other. And then Doc Holliday says this one quote, say when. Say when. And then his buddies come and they grab him and they take him away. They're like, oh, he's just joking, he's drunk and shit like that, right? Now, think about this. The Archons, those are the guys that are the Ringos. They're making big threats. Let's play for blood. Let's play for blood. And we who have woken to these things and woken to what their plan is and their ideas are, we're saying, hey, man, okay, say when. I'm your Huckleberry. Say when. So when it happens, like, let's see it. I want to see it, because until then they're making all these threats. I'm not going to be like a normal local normie who is not privy to these things. So when he does make his move, I'm not surprised by any of it because I've already been anticipating that. Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that bluff will get called eventually too.
I think so.
Again, I don't know if it's going to be a legitimate nuclear weapon that gets detonated, but I think I'm fairly certain that at a certain point in the script, this big explosion has to happen. Whether
Well,
they call it a nuclear detonation or something else, they have something brand new that they want to, try and enforce on the world as far as some new sort of weaponry that we're supposed to be afraid of.
yeah, I think the nuclear threat is they can't fulfill that. There's nothing that they could create that would be equivalent to like a what they say these nuclear explosions are supposed to do, kill millions of people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe they can create that because going back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it wasn't so much the explosion that happens. Those reports, there's been many. There's okay. This is open source stuff. It was more like firebombing,
Right.
and in that created the most damage. So it wasn't this big bomb explosion. Now, do I believe they dropped a big bomb? Yes. I know that because we see the videos of the mushroom cloud.
Yeah.
I know I've created mushroom clouds myself, so I know how that works. And so I think the nuclear aspect is it's just another lie to keep us afraid. But I believe the more because in some cases, like people living across the United States is very big. So if you're living in like some rural town, like where there's no base around anywhere, like you're not really worried about nuclear bombs trying to bomb you there. They're going to bomb like Los Angeles and New York and all the other kind of shit, right?
Well,
so you're
they're
not
going
really
to hit
about,
military installations too.
yeah, military installations. Okay, so but what I'm getting at is that so shit, I just lost my thought.
Sorry.
No, I'll get it again. But yeah, I just going back to the nuclear threat of being able to hit locations here in the United States. People aren't so much afraid of that. What they're afraid of is, oh, there's a virus because it's floating around anywhere. You can get it from anybody. They don't know they're sick. That is more tangible for the persons. The nuclear threat's not so much. I think it's like, oh, World War III, but
right.
the health aspect, man, you'll get everybody. And that's why I pointed back to that document came out last year talking about sometime in the summer, July 4th, there's going to be so I think this LA riots, nuclear threat, and then boom, comes in the next health scare. Maybe. My thought.
It would kind of make sense, right? Bounce the people around a little bit, shake them up,
boom,
and then hit them with the knockout blow.
There you go.
Yeah, I could see that. Because again, I don't see that the average American is going to put up with much more of this.
I don't think so either.
I mean, again, I don't have a whole lot of interaction with the folks that I live around here in Texas, but the little bit of interaction that I do have, folks seem to be getting pretty fed up with the way things are going in the world. As far as what I can tell, and they're at the point, some of them, where they're starting to take matters into their own hands. And I think we've seen some evidence of this in other places as well. I mean, I've seen evidence of it here locally, where folks are like, I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do what I want.
Yeah,
I had a feeling. Again, like I said at the beginning, I had a feeling we were going to get poked and prodded a lot more again this summer. But there's still there's a card that hasn't been played yet, and I don't think it's the nuclear card.
Okay, yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's a biological card.
I don't think it's a biological card either. Because it has in order to capture the maximum amount of attention, because another thing you have to remember, one of the trends that I've been paying attention to is the viewership across the various platforms, right? Just not just for Liberty Radio or just the stuff that I enjoy consuming, but like everything. Like I make it a point as I'm going through and setting up the streams each day to look at the various numbers that whatever's on the front page are getting. And I kind of make a mental note of it so that when I look at it the next day, oh, this is up, this is down, this is up, this is down. And just kind of paying attention to that as time goes by.
Mm-hmm.
Viewership is dropping off across the board. So in order to get people back into formation, right, to draw them back into where they're paying their attention to the media again, it's going to have to be something different.
Okay. Oh, check this out. This you just made me think about this. Now, you as a content creator, you have a name, you have a channel, you have a Telegram group, you're putting out information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, you're putting out independent media. Okay, they want to stop you. So
no shit.
For you, what you're seeing, they're showing you like, hey, things are dropping off. People aren't listening anymore. This dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Now, could be true, but I believe that could be something that this is a tactic that they're gonna put on you guys again, because we know these channels that we're on. Rumble is still, owned and operated by Peter Thiel, right? So, like they know this stuff. And so if they could get you guys to be discouraged about the information you're putting out, it maybe think, well, hey, nobody's listening. Fuck, I'm just not going to do it anymore. And that's again, this is like 50 chess stuff.
Yeah, that's what the reach limiting is all about. They've been doing that for a couple of years now.
But I'll say this though about what I wanted to camp off on this is that I think that's a ruse, and that you are getting your information out there. Keep doing what you're doing. Anybody who's in the independent media, keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop, because it is reaching people. No one's going to take this shit anymore. I think the war machine is going to break within the next 5 years. That's my opinion.
Well, I mean, that was part of the business model for Liberty Radio, was to kind of ensure that happening, but we'll see.
No, keep
still
it up,
working
dude.
on it.
Keep
Still
it,
working
no,
on
keep
it.
Keep, dude, bro. You're reaching people. And when I was looking at actually today, because I was kind of just thinking like, oh shit, well, like where do I go to get the most updated information? I was looking at your Telegram group, because you're watching the shit and you're putting it out. So I got some news from there. I was like, shit. I clicked on the link, and so that's you're keeping us updated, man. Like, do what you do, dude.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, all I'm doing is I'm just aggregating, quite honestly. Because again, one of the main things that I wanted this particular vehicle to serve as was a literal time capsule for this period. Yeah. And in my mind, the best way to be able to do that is to grab the widest possible sampling of everything that you can, because you're never going to get the full picture from one person's version of events. It's just not going to happen. You have to get as many different viewpoints as possible, and then you have to put all of those together and make them fit together somehow in order to figure out what reality actually looks like.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that I know about media, more so than a lot of other professions in this world, media is used primarily to influence the perception of the viewer.
Yeah.
Regarding whatever the subject of the media is.
Yes.
That's why you can never take any single piece of media as gospel on anything.
Yes.
Because, and especially when we're talking about people and it's media about people,
Yes.
especially that was made by those people that the media is about, they're always going to present themselves in the best light. I fully admit I am never going to put myself in a scenario that I'm relaying to the audience that makes me look like a piece of shit. I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? Doesn't make any sense. That's not how human behavior works.
Right.
So you always have to take this into account whenever you are consuming any
Yeah.
media. Doesn't matter what it is. At the end of the
Yes.
day, it is all propaganda.
Oh yes. And a great movie. And I was actually thinking about this movie a few days ago, and I was thinking, like, okay, this weekend I'll watch the movies. I was gonna do it tonight, but it's not gonna happen tonight. But the movie Network. The
Oh, it's a great
movie
movie.
Network, that shows exactly what you're talking about. It explains all the stuff you just last said about someone telling you what to say, or for the purpose of this, or we're going to write this story for this. That movie Network shows it all.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever it came out, I don't know, 1970s or
Yeah.
80s or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it
70s.
was early 70s, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. And he's out there and he's like, I'm mad as hell and I won't take this anymore, you know? And
It's a great line.
yeah, and I never knew where that came from until I saw that movie. And that was only like maybe 2 years ago I saw the movie.
Oh,
I never
wow.
knew I never knew where that came from.
Oh, I'm going to deduct a point for myself. It was 1976 Network came
76,
out.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I was 2 years old. I don't think my parents would have let me watch it. There was too much cursing.
Well, yeah, because they were talking about cable. So now think about this. They were talking about cable network, right? Like a cable network.
Yeah.
But when did cable network really first started happening? Wasn't probably until the early 1980s that cable network really started taking
Well,
hold.
I mean, HBO was technically, I guess, considered the first cable network because it was like one of the first additional channels that you can get, or at least it's the first that I remember. And that was
HBO, yeah.
like mid to late 70s. Like I remember I think it was 1979. I had a friend that lived down the street, a couple of houses. They had HBO. We didn't because we were poor.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
So we'd watch
Yeah.
HBO down at his place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That stuff's all going away, man. Like I think it looks like from what they're talking about with revoking the ability of television networks in the United States to be able to secure advertising from pharmaceutical companies as part of their revenue cycle.
Yeah.
That accounts for like, they say it's 25% of all of the ad revenue for television.
Okay.
I think it's higher than that. I think it's a lot higher than that.
I think it could be. Yeah.
If they take that away from the television networks, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
It's done. Television's done at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's going to happen by the end of the year.
Man, I hope so, man. Like when I heard that Israel had bombed Iran, I was just like, do it. Let the machine break itself. Like, let's see it. I said this before. I want to see this shit go down.
We're going to see it go down. It's going to go down over the course of the next 5 years.
Say when. Say when. Threat of nuclear holocaust. Say when. Threat of a biological outbreak. Say when. Threat of the dollar going away in digital IDs. Say when. Say it. we're in the knowledge of this.
They're about to.
Yeah.
It's again, this is all setting the stage. Right? This is part of Klaus's angrier world that he warned us about, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world is very, very angry right now. We have not one of the things that we haven't had the AI crisis yet. that's still on the
Yeah,
checklist. We haven't been
yeah,
able to check that off yet.
yeah. Well, so here now, check this out with not just AI, but with cyber stuff, right?
Hmm.
So now Whitney Webb, she's a great person. She does like great stuff, and she came on an interview last year, and she was highlighting some of the stuff that was said, like either a World Economic Forum or someplace. It was like one of these
Hmm.
big events where all these elites gather, and they were saying, we believe there's going to be a digital, crisis that's going to
Yeah.
happen, by the end of 25, and stuff like that. So they're saying this. They're saying
Hmm.
this. This is 2025, and everything is so hyped up right now. Like
Hmm.
it's ready to go. They
Well,
could
it's,
drop this right now.
it's not only that. There have been it's part of the thing with cyber attacks is
Yes, cyber
it's
attack.
as a layperson, as somebody who is not involved in the industry of cybersecurity, looking at it from the outside, it's difficult to determine the actual veracity of any alleged cyber incident.
Okay.
Because I know there have been documented cases already where they've claimed that a breach has happened where there's like no evidence of a breach
Yeah.
ever happening.
Okay, you just from what you said, no evidence of a breach ever happening, cyber wise. Okay,
Mhm.
now think about this. Again, we're talking about the people who have brought us all these hoax, the nuclear hoax, the HIV hoax, the
Right.
COVID hoax. All these people have brought the hoax of Al Qaeda and all this stuff. Stuff. These are the guys that are saying this. Cyber attacks. Okay, cyber attack. It's not so much a cyber attack, I believe, because at certain levels, these higher ups, these archons, they have control of all the assets of the world. Okay.
Mhm.
So they can just shut internets down and communications down. That's all they have to
Oh,
do.
absolutely they can.
Just
They
all they
do it
do
right now.
is so all they do is they shut it down
They
and they
just
say
shut off the internet in
and
Gaza.
but then they say it was a cyber attack.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
there doesn't have to be a virus or a cyber virus
There
that
doesn't even have
infects.
to be a cyber attack. They can
It's
just
just
say there's one.
they close it down and say, "Hey, there's a
Yep.
cyber attack."
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I think is.
that's one of the things that I tried for a while to impress upon people because again, I read what people put into the live stream chats. I read comments underneath of videos. I like to get a feel for what the general public is thinking and how they're expressing themselves, right? Tells you a little bit about their mindset. Not a whole
Yeah,
lot, but it gives you a little bit of insight.
yeah,
People will get worked up over the most ridiculous things that they can't even begin to verify. And I kept trying to impress upon people, look, none of this shit that anybody is promising is coming down the pipe. None of it actually has to happen. Not a single thing, not one. The only thing that is necessary in order to move the agenda forward is that people believe these things are going to happen, because that's the important part of the equation is the belief.
yeah,
Once you have invested your belief into something, you
yeah,
begin to act as if.
yeah,
And that's the whole fucking game.
yeah. No, you're right, man. Like, so we were talking earlier. I might have mentioned this earlier, but the whole nuclear scare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Last week, Tulsi Gabbard comes on. She's talking about she went to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and she's hyping up this nuclear threat, right? So she's doing her job to hype these things up, Oh, she just went there, and then they say they attacked these nuclear facilities. Like, yeah, yeah, as bad as it was, I don't want to see that happen again. So I agree with Israel bombing Iranian nuclear facilities, right? So we see the we see the correlation there. You know, she hyped it up to get everybody scared about it. So when Milo Mikowski comes on and says, "Hey, we did this we to stop the nuclear production of Iran," everyone's
Right.
like, "Oh yeah, hooray, hooray!" You
Right,
know, like
right. But like, what was it 2 years ago when the fighting in Ukraine was getting close to the nuclear facility there? Everybody was freaking the fuck out,
yeah,
but now they're cheering this.
yeah,
Like most people
script.
don't even understand their own cognitive dissonance. That is something that I've learned over the course of the last 5 years. Like they literally don't understand when they're exhibiting it. Like they think that the two things are like they can coexist. It's fine.
Yeah, like I think like it's like what happened? Like what happened? Like was like there's certain people that they're just locked into this idea that whatever comes from the authorities or from the news media,
Well,
presumed
that's the
authorities,
indoctrination.
is the indoctrination, right?
Yeah,
And
that's what gets installed in you in public school.
yeah, well, so now think about this, okay? Um, I think I mentioned this on this channel before, but if not, then Bertrand Russell,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he wrote a document or a book, I think in the early 1920s, about how the impacts of science on society. And he talks about how by age 10, they want to have the children indoctrinated. Okay, so he's
Yeah.
talking about in the 1820s. Okay, now 1820s, by age 10, they want to have the children indoctrinated. That would be if they're age 10, let's just say 1930, 40s, 50s, that's the boomer. That's the boomer class.
Yes.
The boomer class has been indoctrinated by this guy admitting in his book
Mm-hmm.
that they've been doing this in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
The boomer class by the 1950s is indoctrinated, and that's why they are white liberals, conservatives that believe that this United States, we got to
Mm-hmm.
fight for our country. You know, that's
Oh,
the
it
boomer
gets
class.
better. It gets better because one of the things that I figured out, they understand, right, that they have to have not only the races pitted against one another, right, in order to create that division. They also have to have the generations
Yes.
pitted against one another as
Gen X.
another level
Yeah.
of division. So what they figured out is we can alter the indoctrination program like every 20, 25 years or so to create, a different product,
Mm, yeah.
but one that's going to be in direct conflict with the product that was created for what is likely to be the generation of that group's parents.
Yeah.
So that, again, as they're trying to interact with one another throughout the courses of their lives, they encounter a bunch of unnecessary friction that prevents them from doing a lot of things that they want to be able to do with their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's engineered frustration is what it
Yes.
is. And
Yeah.
it's fucking sick. It's absolutely fucking sick. We're
Yeah.
talking about people like Pavlov, B.F. Skinner,
Yeah.
Bertrand Russell.
Yeah.
Who is the Jeremy Bentham is another one.
Mhm.
Sick motherfucker. All right. These were people who were like, let's figure out exactly what kind of humans we can create and how we can control them
Yes.
for our profit
Yes.
and
Yes.
benefit.
Yes.
That's what behavioral psychology is all about, ladies and gentlemen. Don't
Yes.
know if you've been able to figure that out on your own or not, but that's pretty much what it is. How do we create the best consumer for the model that we have right now?
Yes. No,
And they
you're
did
spot
it to
on.
all of us. They did
Yeah.
it to all of us.
No, you're spot on. I mean, I read when I first read propaganda from Edward Bernays. I never knew who Edward Bernays was. But I tell people this: I was like, Edward Bernays was the most influential person that you never knew
Mm-hmm.
about, and they don't even
That's
know,
very true.
right? And I tell them, I was like, he's the one that created bacon and eggs, women's smoking, women's rights, women's right to vote. Like, it's this guy, and he did it, and he says some very, very outlandish things in his book. The very first book that he wrote, I believe it's the first book he wrote, Propaganda. In the very first chapter, in the very first paragraph,
The very first paragraph, yeah.
he's telling you, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but basically he's saying the American public is so dumb that they don't know who to vote for. Therefore, there is a secret society of men who actually really run this country. And he's telling you that in the first paragraph on the first page, you
Yep.
know.
They were very full of themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they still are. The ruling class still is. They consider themselves better than common stock because, again, that's what they've been programmed with.
Yeah.
It's the other thing that always amuses me is when people get all bent out of shape when these people act like the psychopaths that they were engineered to be. That's the purpose they were created for. That's exactly how they're supposed to be acting. That's how they were programmed. Doesn't make it right. I'm not saying that, but that's exactly what you should be expecting from them based on their life experience. These like King Charles, right? I'm never going to expect him to act like the people that I interact with at the local grocery store or the local Walmart, right? That would be foolish.
Yeah. You're a peasant.
Right. But yeah, again, people will get all into their feels about, oh, so and so did this or so and so said that. And okay. What effect does it really have on your life? What are you going to do about it? What?
Yeah.
You just want to bitch? Okay.
And therefore that's the purpose of the media. It creates this.
It's in some ways it is an outlet.
Well, not only that. So not only that. Think about this. You have a person who has some issues going on, and without social media, they can't get on the internet and just voice their opinion. And, all these different platforms and whatnot. They're stuck there. They're like, oh, I want to do. Without that, they got to go to their neighbor. They got to go to the next person to like really express their ideas. Okay, so they're with the internet, and with the social media, because I believe social media was a programmed asset of the three-letter agencies to engineer us. And so with
silent weapons
we have this,
for quiet wars.
Yes, so we have this idea that we have to reach out telepathically or this externally rather than go face to face anymore. So social media has brought people like, I don't have to go out and meet anybody. I can meet them online. I don't have to meet anybody personally and feel their aura. I don't have to be socially connected with them. I can just do this online. I think that's what they did with this social media stuff.
That's one of them. Another, well, again, it's also about engineering behavior, right? Because the majority of social media that I've encountered in my life, at least after, was it when the switch was really made? I think it was round about, well, no, I guess it was around about 2016, really. Because there's some documentation that's starting to come out that supports this, where the algorithms were changed on various platforms to emphasize specific types of content over other specific types of content. Oh shit, you all right, man? Don't hurt yourself. Um, but it wasn't always that they were trying to game our emotions through social media overtly, or at least as overtly as they're doing it now. There was a point where it switched. And I think it was around about the time that Trump got elected the first time, 2016, 2017, or at least that's what the documents that I remember seeing internally from Facebook were saying. But I have always believed that the purpose of social media was for programming the public. It wasn't about giving you what you wanted. It was about feeding you what they wanted you to have to turn you into the predictable consumer, again, that they wanted you to be.
Yeah.
Because again, when we're talking about social media in 2025, what is the most successful social media platform right now?
Probably Twitter or Instagram, maybe. I don't know.
Twitter, I thought maybe? It was still TikTok.
TikTok, maybe. Okay, maybe, yeah.
I mean, it's for the better part of the last 5 years, I'd say TikTok's been the grand champion.
Okay.
Because they've been able to capture attention and keep it.
Yeah.
Which is the whole purpose of social media to begin with.
Yeah. And you won't regret it.
Here's the other part. They figured out how to do that and also to capitalize on it from a consumer standpoint, because you have TikTok and then you have the TikTok store.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's most people, the people that only ever use TikTok for social media, I didn't know about it until I heard about it on the No Agenda podcast. There's a whole other side of TikTok that a lot of people don't know anything about. It's basically, it's Etsy that is attached to TikTok. So you can be a TikTok content creator and have your store that's attached on the exact same platform. It's great because your audience never has to go anywhere else. They come there for your content. They come there for your products. It's all integrated. Bam.
Yeah. You know, what I was going to say was that the interconnectability, like it's great to be able to connect to people all across the country or even all across the world. But it's not that it's just the connectivity of like, hey, let's meet and get in like these Telegram groups and have a chat or everyone's interacting. It's the social media aspect is the 2-minute videos or 1-minute video. People are just swiping. They're just like doom scrolling. They're doom scrolling, right? While they're still connected with other people. And then it's just like, so when people think, oh, social media was gone, I wouldn't be able to connect with my friends. It's like, no, like what we need is for this deliberate operation to encapsulate the mind for 1 to 2 minutes, right? Being able to connect with you or even across these channels right now, like that's great. We're connecting, we're like-minded, but most people aren't using social media or the internet for that purpose.
I know. But it's with the internet, it's always been that way. 70% of the internet is porn.
Yeah.
Last
Really?
I did the check on the numbers.
That's big.
The vast majority of the internet is porn, and the vast majority of those servers are located within a 90-mile radius of the DC metro area.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, so like what we use the internet for, it's like probably 0.001% of the internet.
Well, you know, I got a great story about the internet, okay? Because you and I are the same age, and so what I remember about the internet, I think it was like maybe 2007, and that was when AOL first came on. Okay, 2007, there wasn't even cell phones back then. Okay, that didn't happen. I think maybe 2000. Maybe it was 2009 when cell phones came out in the United States, but 2007
smartphones,
cell phones. I'm sorry, not 2009. I was mixed up. 1999
All right, now we're talking. Now we're
Now
talking.
we're set. Okay,
Yeah.
1997.
Cell phones were
not a thing. They were not a thing.
well,
Because
not
pagers,
like we came to know them. I think they were available in 1997,
yeah,
but it wasn't
they had
like everybody had one.
No, yeah, it was because it was the big backpack, and they had they had to do the thing like that.
Yeah.
But cell phones, personal cell phones, wasn't a thing in 2000 or 1997. But I believe I remember in 1997 was when the World Wide Web really opened up, and because I was in the military, and that's when we were doing, paperwork stuff. And now we had to get emails. Okay, so the shop that I was working at was a dive shop, and I would go in there, and I go in there one morning, and all the divers are around the computer, and they're laughing and shit like that. I was like, dude, what are you guys doing? It's like, we're on the internet. I was like, what's that? Like the World Wide Web. We're chatting. I was like, you're chatting? Like, what are you talking about? You're chatting with who? It's like, people on the internet. I was like, what? And they're in these chat groups, right, on AOL. Right. And I remember I was just like, I don't know what was going on. I was like, I wasn't into that. I was like, okay, whatever. Later that night, I was in a dive barge, okay? And I used to sleep there. And one of the divers was still there late at night on the computer. And I was like, bro, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm chatting. I was like, what do you mean you're chatting? He's like,
talking to this chick.
I'm talking to this chick. I was like, you're talking to a girl? He's like, yeah, dude, we're about to go meet. I was like, what do you mean you go meet? He's like, yeah, dude, she lives here in San Diego, and I'm going to go meet her at this bar. I was like, what? I was like, so he's already starting from the very onset of the internet. He's already like computer dating. I was like, you're going to meet a girl from the internet? You never met this girl before? He's like, no, he showed me a picture, and he clicked on it, and it was like, it was all pixelated.
Yeah.
I was just like, what? And that was my first experience to the internet, was this dude. Wow. So right from the very beginning, people were using it for dating and
oh yeah, absolutely. I guarantee you there was drug dealing going on the internet back in the 90s too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a communications medium. It's real-time communication, which is something that you need in order to be able to make the advancement from a level, what is it, a level 0 to a level 1 civilization where you're actually able to escape the planet.
Yeah, and you remember those days when it was the dial-up, right? You had to plug it into a phone. You had to plug it into a
and then make all the funky sounds as it was connecting.
Yeah, and then
yeah, so to put the AOL disc in the drive. Yeah, I remember all that.
Yeah, shit. And then I remember in 1998. My buddies, I was living in San Diego, and they were like, dude, you got to get a pager. And I was just like, what do I need a pager for? He's like, so we can call you. And I was like, what do you mean you can call me on the pager? He's like, no, we can text you on the pager, and then that tells you to call us at a certain phone, and we can talk. And so the first time I got a pager was, maybe 1998.
Sounds
1998. Right. I got a pager, and then I remember the next big advancement was the big Nokia phones and stuff, which came out in 99, 2000. And then I went to Japan in 2001. And then Japan was like more advanced. They had these little smartphones, and everyone was like, these little phones and stuff, flip phones and stuff. Like Japan was the cutting edge at the time in 2000. Like, so it's crazy how far we've come with this telecommunications stuff.
Well, I mean, when you think it really started back in like the 1850s, when they were able to get the telegraph wires up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's been one of the things that has always fascinated me throughout the course of my life. I mean, when I was in school, I think it was like 6th grade or something. Yeah. We had to, because I was part of the. Everyone refers to it as the GATE program. I didn't call it that because that's not what it was called in our school district, but it was that program because I've heard other people tell stories about the curriculum from it, and I'm like, oh shit, we did that. But we had to do a report on like an inventor or something, or a famous scientist or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I picked Marconi. So in sixth grade, I'm like learning about, the wireless telegraph and all of this stuff. And, not even knowing that that's probably something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. But it's like I say, it's something that I've always been interested in for whatever reason, because I do actually like talking to other human beings, right? I like understanding other people's perspective, which is one of the reasons why I do this whole thing in the first place.
And it shows.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's not at all what they want us to use this for. No. They want us to become more tribal.
Yeah.
Right. They want us to be pitted against one another. Because again, it's much easier to keep people conquered when they're fighting each other instead of fighting you, because you're the conqueror.
Yeah, that's the I've said this before. I believe this existence that we have here is occulted, and those that are in the higher powers have occulted knowledge from us, the peasants, the people on the lower realms.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they know these things. They and they've occulted it from us, and so they don't want us to understand this stuff. They don't want to understand the empowerment of human connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
And so they divide us. And so this is alchemical. Again, this goes back to, because I'll say that I'm a Christian. What the Bible, what Jesus said in the New Testament was that a house divided cannot stand. They know that. That is alchemical. Divide a house, it won't stand. It's going to fight. And they've done this. They know this. This is an ancient old playbook that they're still using.
Mm-hmm. A lot of this stuff was the same type of tactics that were used against the population in ancient Rome. They were used against the population in ancient Greece by the ruling class. I mean, none of this stuff is new. None of it. I mean, for crying out loud, you read Plato's Republic and you're like, holy shit, that's the entire playbook right there. It's the whole ball game.
Yeah. Now imagine this about Plato's Republic. Okay. Now, when I first read Plato's Republic with my eyes open, I'm like, wow, this is it. This is the game plan.
Yeah.
So I know what to look for. Okay. Now imagine these so-called elites, or the archons, as I'll call them. They read Plato's Republic and it's like, oh shit, this is how we can control people. Mm-hmm. Where you and I on this level, where it's like, oh shit, when you and I read Plato's Republic, we're like, oh shit, this is how they control us. Let's not be controlled. These guys are thinking on this level, like, oh shit, this is how we can control them. Let's implement it and then hide it from them. That's the occult.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. So you and I, when we read Plato's Republic, where it's like, oh shit, this is how they control us. This is what frees me. This is what gets me out of the cave. Well, shit, man, I'm going. These guys are like, oh shit, this is what keeps them in the cave. Let's hide it from them.
Yeah.
So they stay in the cave.
I mean, it's I think that's the best explanation for the circumstances that we live under in this world as people, as a species.
Yeah.
I haven't really been able to find anything else that can encapsulate it and explain it any better than that. Problem is, you try telling that to people and you try getting them to read the Republic.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to happen.
Yeah. They don't care.
They don't know why they need to know it. That's the problem. It's part of all of this. I've finally come to accept at this point is we all go through this process if we go through it.
Yeah.
in our own way, in our own time. And like I say, if it's something that even happens to us as an individual at all, because I think some people it just doesn't happen for.
Yeah.
Like
And
they live in the fantasy world their entire life.
yeah, and you said something very important there. You said that if someone were to read Plato's Republic, they don't understand why they need to know it. Okay,
Right.
so they don't understand why they need to know it. Whereas, again, this is the other thing. When you and I read Plato's Republic, we understand the reason why people need to know this stuff.
Right.
So
But that's after a lifetime of
the
study. That's the thing.
well, I don't know. I don't think so. I think if you read these some of these basic lines of what's going on, and then you look at what's going on in the world, you can correlate that stuff. And if you are of the higher mind, you're going to be able to put the two and two together.
Oh yeah, real fast.
Yeah,
but
real
again,
fast.
that's what percentage of the population is of the higher mind.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's again, that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
Because most people, again, right now, most people are what they're concerned with what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah.
They're concerned with is
gas
my
prices.
city the gas prices, is my city going to burn tomorrow? Like, am I going to be in danger if I try to go grocery shopping in the city tomorrow? They're probably paying attention to the basketball championship thing going on. I don't know if the hockey thing is still going on or not, but if it is, they're paying attention to that.
Yeah.
You know, they're not concerning themselves with the things that are more than 6 feet in front of them.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Exactly.
That was one of the things that always struck me as being hilarious about COVID. Because I was like, look, most people can't see more than 6 feet in front of their own faces anyway. So this isn't going to be much of a problem. It's just don't encounter anything in the world and they'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's funny. As far as like talking about like the COVID thing, right? Remember when they had the mask thing going, right? So if you were in a restaurant, you could take off your mask to eat, so you can eat, and COVID wasn't going to bother you, right, until you put your mask back on, right, and got up and you finished your meal, right?
Well, until you tried to get up and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, and so
as I found out.
Okay, yeah. So
I got threatened with being kicked out of a restaurant. I think they did kick me out, actually.
Okay, well, cool. Yeah. So tonight, Wheezy did like a spur of the moment thing, and I jumped on it, and we were talking about that, and they were talking about how the cartels even were like implementing COVID stuff.
Yeah.
And I made a joke saying like, "Oh shit, check this out." So, but I said, "Check this out, Wheezy." I said, even the cartels may have been implementing that stuff, but think about the rules about COVID. If you're sitting down to eat, you can take your mask off. If you're going to sit down and do a line and do some coke or whatever, you can take your mask off because coke wasn't going to bother you then.
No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, doing some drugs, COVID's not going to hold out. You can do some drugs without COVID, interfering.
Okay. COVID's only gonna go after you when you have to take a piss.
Yeah,
you gotta make sure you protect yourself then.
Or you're driving in your car. You're driving in your car and you go to the store.
Did you also happen to notice how quickly the new COVID variant disappeared from the news cycle? They're not talking about that anymore either. It was sweeping the nation, wasn't it? Isn't that what they were telling us? It was exploding all across China. All of a sudden, there's nothing, just nothing there. Guess it didn't get any traction.
Yeah.
I don't think Americans are going to put up with another scamdemic. Not until they're forced to.
I hope not.
I think there's enough people in the country, and when I say in the country, I mean the United States, that just they're not going to do it again. for
I hope not.
whatever their reason is, right? Whether it's
I hope
because
not.
they know it's bullshit, whether it's because they feel like it's bullshit, whether it's because they're having issues from the shot, whatever, because they lost a friend or family member, whatever. I don't think it matters what the reason is. I think enough people have been given enough reason not to comply again
Yeah,
that they're going to have some sort of enforcement mechanism in order to make people comply to another
yeah,
one this time. At least
yeah,
within the next, I would say within the next 5 to 10 years.
yeah. I agree with that. I think that um, again, the nuclear scare isn't so much for some people because when they live in certain countries, well, yeah, I'm not going to get bombed here. They're not really scared of that. What they're scared of is human health. And when you come up with it's called virus or deadly bioweapon,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to react, and that's how they get them. So
It's
they've
quite
mentioned these
possible.
things. Yeah, they've mentioned these things like 2020 to or 2021, 2025, 2030. Like they got some you know dates that they set out for them, and so they got to make things happen. So I'm just waiting back, saying, "Hey, man, say when you're threatening blood, you're playing blood. Like,
They're
hey, man,
coming.
say when, say
They're
when.
coming.
I want to see it.
They've
Show it to
got
us."
they've got the as far as I can tell, they've got the majority of the infrastructure in place now. As far as the mediums of exchange, the systems of exchange internationally, a lot of the hardware as
Yeah,
far as robotics and autonomous vehicles.
yeah,
Um, uh, we're seeing evidence of all of this stuff all over the place. I don't think any of that's in question anymore. It's being rolled out right now.
yeah,
So now they get to, like, that part's done. They don't
yeah,
really have to focus as much attention on that anymore. It's good, it's in motion, it's going. Now we have to start focusing on the Hearts and Minds campaign. We have to start working on convincing the public this is the future that they want. Or at least we have to start crafting the marketing campaign of the future they think they're going to want in order to be able to sell this to them. I
yeah,
think that's the phase that we're entering into now,
yeah.
which is why I've been telling people you're already in the cage. You just don't know it yet because they haven't
Yes,
dropped the marketing campaign on you yet.
yeah.
But
They haven't
it
closed the
is
door.
coming and the door is starting to swing closed.
Yeah,
The window
they're
is
gonna. Yeah,
closing.
yeah,
And I haven't seen anything yet that discourages me from that point of view. I fully expect at some time in the next 24 months, I'm going to have to make a very serious decision about the future of Liberty Radio because it is going to involve uh, personal information
yeah,
being offered up to the
yeah,
government. Not that they don't already have it, but to the government, to the platforms, to the data
yeah.
harvesters, to all those people that I may not necessarily want them to have.
Sure.
Like
Yeah,
that, I know that choice is coming. I don't know exactly when, but I know it's coming. It's on the
yeah.
horizon.
Well, I thought about the myself because I'm a retired veteran and I get disability. So there's gonna be a point where they're gonna say, "Hey, man, you still want your retirement and disability? Then do this."
Yeah,
And I got to make that decision. So, how do we get out of this mess? Like, again, um, I think I know how to get out, and I'm gonna do some research. I've been doing some research already, um, and
good.
I'm hoping that because there are specific court cases where that has been decided in court. Okay, this is by law,
Mhm.
where there's those um, an incident as dumb as it was in the 1800s where a horse and carriage were coming by a city or a town. The horses dropped some manure, okay, and they left it. They didn't know that the horse dropped the manure. They left, okay. Some dude across the street said, "Oh shit, there's some horse manure I can use on my property. I'm gonna scoop it up and I'll come back tomorrow and pick it up." Some dude comes along, finds it, and scoops it up and takes it. Says, "Oh shit, there's some horse manure. There's nobody's around. I'm going to take it." He takes it, right? And so they go to court of the guy who scooped it up, or the guy who owns it, the guy who scooped it up, or the guy who took it when it was all scooped up, right? A day later. And what they decided was it belongs to the person who dropped it. If they never intended to drop it, then it still belongs to them. Now, what I'm getting at is that within the laws of man, okay, there is another court case where they stated and they cited that all men are prescribed to no laws other than that which is prescribed by nature. Okay, so if a man creates a law, okay, who you are in your divine person, if man creates a law, you're not subject to that unless it's prescribed by nature. So when they put these ordinances on us, like drive a certain speed, that is not a law of nature. That's a law of man. Right. I'm not jurisdiction to that. I'm not subject to that. And so what I'm getting at is within this idea, this new idea that I'm coming into, is that when you know who you are from the very beginning, you understand that none of these rules even apply to you. So this rule of like, get this ID, that doesn't even apply to me. I believe that there are enough people out there that will create these channels and these networks still going, that when we do that, we can operate on it. You just have to know who you are. If that makes any sense. I was rambling, sorry.
It does, but I think that's also the same system that they're putting in place, is so that you have no it's not that you don't have a right to privacy anymore. It's just that privacy is going to be engineered out of the system, and in many ways already has been.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's not a question of whether you have a right to privacy anymore. It's just there is no privacy anymore.
So I'm not going to go too deep into this because I'm still learning this myself. But basically, that idea that I'm talking about covers all of that. What I will say this is that there are certain channels like, and I'm going to shout out to Crow 777 because this is one of the first channels that woke me up in 2018. But he has his own private server. So what he does is he puts out the first hour over the network, but then he has a private server to where the second hour is just him. And that's where he talks, uncensored. People can because it's his own private server.
Right.
I think when people start moving to that format of having their own servers, that it's outside of control of the FCC or whoever these people that control this information is, or the internet. Like when you start operating to that, that's where we get to.
Well, I mean, that's going to be, everyone should have been kind of planning for that the whole time anyway, but it doesn't seem like many folks have been. No. That was why one of the first things I did was set up the website, because I knew that there was going to come a time where being on somebody else's platform was just not going to be an option. And you were going to have your own destination on the internet for people to go to be able to find you. I think we're pretty much at that point. When you look at what Twitter is doing to people, when you look at what YouTube is doing to people, what Instagram is doing to people, we're basically at the point now where the major social media platforms need to be abandoned by the masses. There's just no other way at this point. Yeah. We've been able to figure out that they're not actually serving us. They're not for our net benefit, and we need to just walk away from them. Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to reclaim the power that we've given to them over the course of the last 15 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need to, as media creators, especially if you've ever read through an end user license agreement for a social media platform, you would never put your media on it,
Yeah.
because once you do, you don't own it anymore.
Well, Driz, I was gonna say that maybe you thought about this is that so within the Joe Rogan realm, the realm of Joe Rogan and Tim Pool,
Mm-hmm.
um, they
They'll
don't
be
really
fine,
have.
by the way. They
Yeah,
won't
yeah,
have
yeah,
anything
yeah,
to worry about.
yeah. So they're underneath the umbrella, but in that realm, they don't have a alternative media channel that promotes music and new clips and music from the vault. Like so,
Mm-hmm.
there could be a spot for you if you want to bend the knee. There could be a spot for you
No,
there.
never,
You be with the Tim
never.
Pools and the Joe Rogans.
No, won't happen. It won't happen. I
I'm
have.
joking. I'm joking.
I know you are. I know you are. Problem is, I've hung out with the popular kids at
Mm,
various points throughout my life, and the end result has always been the same. They are shallow, insecure,
mm,
uh, highly unevolved human beings the vast majority of the time.
yeah.
And it typically what happens is about 6 to 12 months in, I begin to realize who these people actually are, and I'm
Mm,
like, "Oh,
yeah.
okay, I've encountered your type before. I know
Yeah.
what you are. I just need to get away from you before you
Yeah.
can take any more."
Yeah.
It's That's why, again, going back to an earlier rant on the broadcast, don't believe what you see in media, ladies and gentlemen, because the what you're being presented on the screen is make believe.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of media.
Mm,
It's not real. It's not true, but it wants you to believe that it is.
yes. Oh
So
yeah.
I can't play in that world.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to play in that world. And
Yeah.
in some ways that's a curse, because again, I'm never going to reach that level of a Joe
Yeah.
Rogan or a Tim Pool. Some people would see that as a curse. I, however, see it as a blessing, because that means I'm not going to have to deal with some of the problems that they have to deal with. I'm
Yeah.
probably never going to have to worry about being swatted, if any of that was even legitimate to begin with, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I look at it. But again, that was part of the Liberty Radio business model. I understood certain things going into this. I knew we were going to have to conduct the operation in a certain way in order to be able to make it as far as we have at
Yeah.
almost 4 years in now.
Nice. Yeah.
So,
It was funny that you said a certain thing that you've met some of these individuals, right?
hmm?
And I've also met certain individuals that are also in the truth media realm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they are still the nut huggers of like the Joe Rogan types.
Oh, I know.
And I'm not going to say the guy's name because I still do love the guy very much. He's cool. I've met him several times. I've met him several times. I'm going to say 4 times I've met this dude already personally. We've exchanged, like, not just in an event, but in conversation. I've
Mm-hmm.
met him personally. He's in that truth media realm, but he still subscribes to Joe Rogan. And I'm going to say this: even the last time I met him, on the fourth time I met him, um, he didn't even know who I was.
Yeah.
It was almost like so. But I've met certain people, like let's just say going to the Third Eye Carnival with Steve from A and Wake Up and Scott Armstrong from Rebunked, like Charlie Robinson. I met those guys, and when I saw them again, they knew who I was. They were like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" Like they recognized me. So I'm not saying that the guy could have been preoccupied with other things, but we've actually conversed several
Mm-hmm.
times before. The last time I met him, he was like, "Hey, yeah, how's it going?" He didn't know who I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a disconnection there.
Yes. And that is something that the entertainment industry creates in people. Again, it's something I've experienced many times over.
Yeah.
Something I'm familiar with. Some believe it or not, I've actually been on the other side of that too,
Mm.
where somebody has introduced themselves to me multiple times and I don't
Okay.
remember the previous
Okay. Yeah.
times. And again, I'm not saying that to excuse it or anything. I'm just saying
Yeah.
I know I've been on both sides of that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And it is something that is prevalent in people who engage in the performing arts.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
That's true. Yeah.
some people choose to believe their press, and some people don't.
Yeah.
That's the best way that I can describe it. And some people choose to follow only the good things, and wherever that's going to take them, which isn't always to the best place, unfortunately. But that's where we're gonna have to leave it tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back on the air next Tuesday night to play more of your requests than any damn body else. So we will see you next Tuesday if this is actually getting through with all of the drop frames. Goodness, good thing I'm recording it. Good night, everybody.
Peace.